Our first trip is going to take us to Colorado and beyond into Utah. My first Astro trip had a huge learning curve. I had just bought a travel trailer a few months before, and this would be our first long haul. A grueling 1,200-mile journey to Monument Valley, and then backtracking to the Rocky Mountain Star Stair. The forecast was looking good before I left, but right before leaving, it started to change significantly. I was on the fence about going, but decided I would take my kids and turn it into a trip with them if the weather turned sour. The first weather change was a bad windstorm that would be coming into the Monument Valley area as I would be arriving. I'd only pulled the trailer on a couple short trips, and I did not want to have my first time out be in gale force winds. So I decided to leave a day early. But after only 2 hours of travel, I would pick up some kind of metal spike in my tire at a gas station and nearly end up with a flat. For those of you that don't have tire pressure sensors on your vehicle when you are towing, I really suggest you get one, even if it's a cheap one. That small system saved the trip before it even started. After plugging the leak, and then plugging it again, because I didn't do it right the first time, we were off on the road. We crossed Kansas in the dead of night, which is my preferred time to cover long travel distances. People always ask why I don't fly on my trips. For me, driving across this great nation is the greatest realization and perhaps the last vestige of real liberty in this world. Sure, flying gets you there faster, but you miss everything the journey has to offer along the way. As the sun came up, we found ourselves crossing into southeastern Colorado. But there was something else I was unprepared for when towing, and that was the extra time needed to get where you're going. I didn't consider the extra time it would take to stop and refuel with a mid-sized truck. I know my truck is typically not suggested for towing an RV, but the weight limits are well within tolerance, and until I can afford something bigger, she pulls just fine. I thought that the route I had planned would avoid all the high mountain passes that I-70 is notorious for. Unfortunately, I encountered several passes around 10,000 feet, and each time I didn't think my truck was going to make it over the top. Shortly after we got through Alamosa, Colorado, I cut the cameras. There appeared to be a charging issue between the truck and my GoPro, and after 18 hours of solid travel, I really didn't feel like messing with it. As a result, I didn't get any footage of the incredible scenery we passed through in southern Colorado and the southeastern corner of Utah. Finally, after just over 24 hours of straight driving, we arrived at our destination in Monument Valley during a beautiful sunset. Now, I'm quite sure that I could have gotten some excellent Astro done that night, but I was out the moment I got the bed down in the trailer. Had I known what was in store for the next few days, I might have done things a little differently. The next morning, I was up before dawn, and with coffee in hand, I watched the desert sunrise. The rest of the day, however, we were trapped in the trailer. The forecasted gale force winds had arrived, and we spent the day being rocked back and forth in the trailer. It would not have been a good day to explore the area. I don't know how those cross-country bicyclists do it. Finally, as evening fell, the wind subsided, but the clouds would remain, ruling out another night of Astro. On day 3, we decided to go to Valley of the Gods. On the way over there, though, my GoPro stopped working. I believe there was some kind of error due to the dust storms the day before. I lost the footage of the kids hamming it up at Forrest Gump Point and Mexican Hat, which was a pretty cool landmark. Eventually, though, I figured it out, and it worked for the rest of the day. Originally, I had planned to stay a couple nights out here and try out the boondocking capabilities of this new trailer. I'm glad I went with the KOA instead, though. I don't think my kids could have handled that. If I was by myself, it could have easily been done. Turns out, though, the advertised capabilities of the trailer are not as advertised. Shocking, I know. On a side note, I don't know how some of those trailers get into the camping spots there. That road is so windy, and some of the hairpin corners, there's no way I could have gotten my trailer in. Eventually, we made our way through Valley of the Gods and drove up the Moki Dug Way. What a view! My son has a fear of heights and didn't really enjoy this part of the trip. My daughter, she didn't miss an opportunity to stick a burr under his saddle about it, as little sisters are apt to do. At one point, she called out that there was a car that had fallen off the road. And I thought she was joking until I saw the smashed car a couple 100 feet over the edge. We took lunch at the Muley Point East Overlook. I have a fear of heights too, but I wasn't going to miss this photo op. And yes, that is about 1,000 feet down to the bottom. We made a quick stop at Gooseneck State Park. But with rain approaching in the distance, it was a race to get back to camp. Day 4 began with another great sunrise. And today we would have Monument Valley on the agenda. We arrived early, and after verifying that I could come back in the evening because the weather looked great, we went out on the Valley Loop. And since we beat the crowds, all of the Navajo vendors were setting up and still had all of their wares. Exploring Monument Valley was a big deal for me. I grew up watching John Wayne movies, and many of the westerns he made were filmed there. Including my favorite, the Searchers. When we arrived at this location, I knew there was something really familiar about it. And it turns out, a pivotal scene was filmed at this location. I can only imagine what it must look like here after dark. Unfortunately, the Navajo do not allow visitors in the valley after dark. After a quick stop in the gift shop to double check that I could come back to the parking lot in the evening and a quick lunch, we made an attempt to get to the Kachina petroglyphs. If you decide to make this little side trip, be advised, Google Maps is wrong and leaves you to a private driveway. We turned around and backtracked to what the reviews were saying was the correct route. We made it about a mile on the trail and creek beds. But eventually we got to a point where we couldn't continue without some major modifications to the truck. My son and I got out and scouted ahead to see if there was any other way around, but it was one way in, one way out. Oh well, maybe next time. Disappointed, we headed back to camp to rest and prepare for the evening. I would return to the Monument Valley Visitor Center solo to wait for dark, and most of the video I shot while people watching didn't turn out. The sunset at the overlook was great. As soon as it started getting dark, though, I noticed something that was going to be a problem. The parking lot here is lit up like Vegas. Plus, there was a red light over the gift shop door that spewed light into the valley for at least a half a mile below. I knew I was going to have to try something else, or this night was going to be wasted as well. Not satisfied, I drove over to a pull-off not far from camp and tried again. In this shot, you can see the lights from the visitor center. All of the lights in the center of the shot are from the visitor center, but from 3 miles away, you could pick up the Milky Way much better. Still, I thought I could get a better shot of the Milky Way. I drove out to Forrest Gump Point and ended up getting the shot. This is one 30-second exposure taken with my Nikon Z6 at 14 millimeters. It really doesn't get better than this. These are some of the darkest skies in the lower 48 of the United States. If I had had the time to do a proper tracked shot, this would have been even better. I'll have to get back to this location and get a shot of the Milky Way as it stands on end lined up with the highway. As it would turn out, this would be the only night that I would see the stars on the whole trip. Day 5 was a travel day, so I couldn't stay out all night shooting the stars. We traveled back to Alamosa through New Mexico to avoid the big mountain passes. And after setting up the trailer in Alamosa KOA, I decided to check out the Great Sand Dunes. But the clouds, it seemed, had followed us. I would take the kids back to the Great Sand Dunes on day 6. We tried to reach the top of the Great Sand Dune, but I'm in no kind of shape for that. We tried our hand at prospecting in Fairplay, Colorado on day 8, but with the weather being constantly clouded out during the evening, I was no longer in any mood to film anything. So that afternoon, we decided we would call it a day and return home. I learned a lot about vlogging on this trip, and in spite of the problems we encountered, it was still a hell of a journey. I hope you all enjoyed following along on our first trip. There's plenty more on the way.